I thought I'd change up the angle so you could see more than like a tenth of the picture that was on my wall, and also so you could see that I do actually own books and I'm not a massive fraud. I am a legitimate English teacher who legitimately loves legitimate books, and I hope that is enough for you. Hello everyone, welcome back to Stories and Stuff. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the books that I have that are all about writing. I do have quite a few books about writing, and I just thought I'd share with you what's particularly good about them and any that I think are worth buying. You don't necessarily need all of them, but there are books here that could help you if there's a specific format you want to write in or for a specific medium, then hopefully some of these will be able to help you. Right then, let's jump into it. The first one I think that most people who are into writing will probably be aware of is The Writer's Journey by Christopher Vogler. This talks about the hero's journey, first created by Joseph Campbell, and it talks about all the different character archetypes and plot points that you can put in that can really help structure your story. If you're interested in writing a sci-fi or perhaps a high fantasy book, then this book is a really good book to look at. It does go into a lot of detail. It is kind of your one-stop shop for high fantasy and world building and getting that kind of epic, travelling, Lord of the Rings style storyline in place. If you're into writing novels, then this is the book that I would probably recommend you get your hands on above all of the others. That's the only story structure specific book that I have. I do really recommend Blake Schneider's Save the Cat, which is a really good book, kind of designed for screenwriting but still more geared towards stories in general, and also The Sequence Approach, which is, I believe, by Paul Galino, and that book also looks at films that have been broken down into sequences using the sequence approach. A really good example of that would be Toy Story as a film. It's broken down into about 8 sequences. Each one has its own problem, which is then resolved, which then creates a new problem as the problem that starts the next sequence. So if you're interested in simply looking at story structure, those are the books that I would recommend. The next one I've got is Writing for Radio by Annie Caulfield. This is, as it says, a practical guide, and it is indeed a very practical guide. It's got things in here for monologues, it's got comedy, it's got writing voiceover for documentaries for radio. Because radio is an audio only medium, there's far less you can take for granted when it comes to your audience, and this really talks about and goes through how you can really make your scenes come alive for an audience, whether that be as a non-fiction voiceover, as a monologue, so a character talking in a scenario, or whether it's people interacting. One of the best chapters in this is actually on radio comedy, because radio comedy is so different to any other type of comedy that you will see, because again, it's audio only. So this is really good if you're looking at writing for radio in any aspect, or if you're trying to write for podcasts. If you are looking at trying to get into screenwriting or writing for stage and screen in any way, then radio is a really good place to start, because generally people are a lot more open to submissions from unsolicited writers for a radio show rather than TV or film, because it's so much cheaper to produce. It's also a lot easier for you to create your own radio show or podcast without the help of a professional production team. That way you can create a really solid portfolio ready to show to someone professional when you're ready. My next books are all about critical writing. These two books are my top books for writing critically. They're both about becoming a film critic. I was a film critic for a while for some websites, and I actually found these books really useful in terms of formatting, things to consider. Timothy Corrigan's A Short Guide to Writing About Film has a really good glossary of film analysis terms, and it also has a way of getting them across to an audience that perhaps don't necessarily know those terms in really simple ways. I find that really useful. Because I specialised in film and television at university, I was trained to use this academic vocabulary when talking about them. So this kind of helped me get those difficult concepts across, but in a much more understandable way. 5 Stars by Christopher Null has some great examples of film reviews, including negative ones, which I think are very difficult to write, and also the kinds of things you should include to make a good and comprehensive review. Not only is this useful for film reviewing, it's also really useful for reviewing books. So I would recommend reading something like this, whether it is for films or for books, if you are looking at becoming a reviewer or reviewing regularly. And the final kind of category I'm going to cover is screenwriting. I do have the most books on screenwriting because it is what I specialised in. So I do have a lot of books here. So first of all, I've got a bit of a wild card. This is Improv for Storytelling by Keith Johnston. For those of you who don't know who Keith Johnston is, he is the king of improvisation. During my time at university, I ran the Improvisation Society for 2 years, and this was kind of my Bible, along with a couple of other improv books, but they are kind of more specifically geared towards performing improv. This book was brilliant. The reason I'm including it here is because it actually talks about how to create a story off the top of your head, because that's what improv is, talking about stuff off the top of your head, being able to just come up with stuff on the spot. And this is really, really good for exercising those muscles when you're brainstorming and trying to generate story ideas. So if you're struggling to come up with story ideas and nothing you've tried so far works, buy this book and give it a go. Because I found just doing some of the games and exercises in here, coming up with characters and coming up with plot points, or taking suggestions and trying to turn them into a story, I found it far easier to come up with and develop story ideas, simply because those storytelling muscles had been exercised using this. A really good book that I was recommended by my tutor was The 21st Century Screenplay by Linda Aronson. If you are interested in screenwriting in any way, this book is a must-have. Linda Aronson talks about what's called the nonlinear narrative of Hollywood. If you've seen Inception, if you've seen Memento, if you've seen Pulp Fiction, we're talking about those kind of narratives. The ones that don't follow that typical Hollywood film convention. She talks about all of those, how you would plot them, how you would write them, how the stories work. So even if you're not thinking of writing that kind of narrative for a film, if you're thinking of writing that for a book, this is still a fantastic book to pick up, because it talks about those less spoken about narratives in a really articulate way. A couple of other kind of highly recommended books worth mentioning are Linda M. James's How to Write Great Screenplays and Get Them into Production. This covers a lot more of the practical side of creating a script and getting it to production, because lots and lots and lots of screenplays are rejected for silly reasons like formatting and so on. So this covers a lot of the more practical aspects, but does also touch on storytelling. Another book that I really like is Writing Screenplays That Sell the Ackerman Way. This is by Hal Ackerman, and what I really like about so many of these books is that they are written by established screenwriters. My favourite part of this book is, I mean, it's a good book all the way through, but my favourite part by far is this list at the back. Ages of writers when they won their Academy Awards. And this is actually really encouraging for someone in their 20s. When you look through, most of them in here are in their late 30s, all the way up to, I mean, I've got someone who's 65, 52, 67. That's really encouraging and kind of tells you that no matter how old you are, it is still possible for you to be able to create a successful screenplay and sell it. The exercises in here are really good for screenwriters as well. So if you've not had any kind of formal training in terms of screenwriting and you're looking for some quick exercises to kind of get you going and thinking as a screenwriter, then this is a good book to get. I've then got a genre specific book, which is The 8 Characters of Comedy by Scott Sedita. This book breaks down sitcoms like Friends and Frasier and Will and Grace, and really shows you how those characters work, because in all sitcoms there are roughly the same 8 characters. By understanding those character archetypes, you can then create your own depending on what setting you're writing for. It's really important if you want to write for television to actually read books that are designed for television as well as film, because the structuring is different and the expectations are different. So this is a really good book to kind of understand writing for television as well. I then have what every writer should have. If you are a novelist, then it's likely you will have read some books. If you want to write for film, then you should have some shooting scripts. And these are actually really interesting to look through in any case. This is Inception, which I got because it's got that kind of non-linear timeline. I've then got Downton Abbey because it's a TV show, so it's really interesting to see how that's formatted as well. Also, the fact that it's a period drama means that there's certain conventions that it follows, so it's really interesting to see that too. And also Peep Show, The Scripts and More. I've obviously bought these, but you don't actually have to buy shooting scripts. There's so many websites out there that allow you to just read the scripts online. And if you follow any kind of writers that blog, they'll tell you that you should be aiming to read about 2 screenplays a week if you're planning to write your own. Just so you can get a hold of the different ways that the conventions are used, the different ways that characters are constructed, and the different ways that the writers show rather than tell. Especially if you're planning on writing a specific genre, it's really useful to see how successful films in that genre do their stuff. And the last and most important, books. Notebooks. I think Moleskine is probably still in business just because of me, but I do love Moleskine notebooks. This is my writer's notebook, and I write all of my stuff in it. This one has all of my film notes in it, and I take either one or both of them with me everywhere, and I try and write whenever I can. I try and write down ideas whenever I can, because hands down, better than all of these books is just writing regularly, because you will develop your own style, you will develop your own sense of what is right and wrong, and that is what you need to have your instinct as a writer, because that is how you will know whether what you're writing is going to work or not. If you do struggle with writing every day and coming up with things to write, then a book like this can help. This is The 5-Minute Writer by Margaret Gerety, sorry I've butchered that. This contains loads of exercises that will only take about 5 minutes, but they will help to develop your sense of how character works, or how an opening line works, or how to develop a mood within a scene, again how to show not tell. This works for all formats, whether you want to write for radio, for theatre, for film, or for a book. This kind of thing works, and I know that Waterstones sell loads of different versions of this kind of book, so if you're in any kind of slump, then a book like this can really help. So there we have it, that's my collection of books about writing. I hope I've managed to cover most formats here, but I think within this collection there's at least one book that could help you, no matter what format you're writing in or what level you're writing at. Thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, then please give it a thumbs up, and comment down below if you've used any of these books before, or if there's any book that you swear by as a writer. If you like what you see here, then please subscribe for more videos all about reading and writing, and I will see you next time. Thank you very much for watching.